listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast with Elliot Rowe and Dr. Tricia Gardner.
So thanks for tuning in. This week we have a very special guest. We have Daniel Negreanu coming on the show. And what we've done is we've actually interviewed him earlier in the week, and he had so much to say that we've split his hour interview into 2 half-an-hour interviews, as we like to keep the podcast the right length that you guys can listen to them each week. So it's still going to be half an hour, but we're going to have 2 episodes in a row with Daniel. So he's going to be covering his views on what makes mindset so important in poker, the future of poker in his mind, and the changes that are happening now that PokerStars is coming into America. So Tricia, you've got your psychology news we can use. What have you got for us this week?
Well, I wanted to talk about how you can get mentally tough. And Daniel's actually going to spend some time talking about all the various psychological components that have allowed him to be really mentally tough and resilient. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of those. Specifically, there is a group of researchers out of the University of Pennsylvania, and they developed what they call master resilience training. And it's actually been given to people in the military, the United States military. They've used it in schools with all different types of people. And basically the goal, if you go through the training, is to help you raise your mental toughness. And they found that there's just a few important things, basically behaviors, if you will, that you need to increase if you want to be more mentally tough. And so those things would be self-awareness, which is identifying your own emotions, thoughts, and motivations, as well as recognizing when your thought patterns are counterproductive. And a lot of times we just go on autopilot. We're not very self-aware. So that's one of the first things you want to take into account. Another thing is self-regulation, which is kind of a fancy word for controlling yourself. So that would be controlling your behaviors, impulses, and feelings so you can actually reach your goals. So that's pretty important. And an important way that you can increase that is through meditation and muscle relaxation, deep breathing. I know those are some tactics that you're really into, right, Elliot?
Yeah, we cover that all the time with the hypnotherapy.
Exactly. Now, just to kind of wrap it all up in a little bow for you, the next thing you need is optimism, which optimism means you expect good things. And it means being able to recognize good wherever you can find it and, kind of fighting back against that assumption that you can't be or won't be successful.
Excellent. And they saw the difference in the military with these things.
Absolutely. The nice thing, because it came out of University of Pennsylvania, they were able to do quite a lot of follow-up study on it. And not only has it helped with mental toughness, but actually shows some reduction with post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's pretty interesting.
And very, very significant for the military as well.
Yes, and you don't have to be in the military. I don't want you to get that idea. Everybody needs resilience because we all face, trials and tribulations and ups and downs. And of course, in the military, it's very extreme, but it could also be extreme at the poker table.
As we see all the time.
Absolutely. So being more mentally tough is something to work on.
Definitely. And just before we bring Daniel onto the show, I'm going to tell you about a special promotion we're running on my website. So that's pokermindcoach.com. Until Thursday the 15th. My Confidence Booster MP3 is going to be 72% off. So for just $7, you can get my most popular MP3 and just get a boost for your confidence. So if you check out pokermindcoach.com, and that's /sale, and it will take you through and you can get one of my MP3s for just $7. So let's give Daniel a call. So Daniel, thank you for coming on the show. If you could introduce yourself to our listeners.
Well, my name is Daniel Negreanu. I'm a very, very sexy male who also plays poker and has won a lot of stuff, tournaments, World Poker Tour Player of the Year. Well, I mean, I hate bragging about myself, but I'm really, really good at poker. And I've been around for almost 2 decades now.
That's amazing, Daniel. Can you kind of talk a little bit to our listeners about how you got interested in poker and what got you into poker in the first place?
Well, I started innocently, really, as a teenager. I used to play snooker, and through that, hanging out in the pool halls, met some people who, wanted to play poker a couple nights a week. And so I thought, okay, I brought $10, lost it within half an hour, and watched for the rest of the night. But then it started to become a regular thing, and I noticed for about the first month or so, the same guys kept winning. And I always thought, wow, I thought this was just luck. And then I was intrigued by that and started to improve and really study what they were doing to make them winners. And within a month or two, I started becoming a winner myself.
And then how did that then progress to you deciding to take the shot at becoming a professional poker player?
Well, interestingly enough, when I became a professional poker player, when I made the decision to, I already was one. I mean, I was probably 22 and I woke up one morning and I'd already been doing it for about 4 or 5 years. And I thought, okay, well, I guess this is what I do for a living, right? It was never a conscious choice to say, I'm going to leave my job and go play poker. I was just already in that world doing it.
Mm.
What then, because a lot of people, on the circuit know you as a person who is really interested, in the mental game. What got you into the mental game, and where were you at in your career when you started recognizing that mental game was super important?
Well, interesting. So I look back, there was two different parts of my life where that happened. And one was, around the 2004 time, in 2003, I started to do things like, if I was traveling to a tournament, I would pack an outfit for the final table. I would pack a suit and have an idea. And I planned for success, right? And I did this without any outside influence in terms of books or any sort of coaching on the subject. And then later, about 3 years ago, I did a course called Choice Centered here in Las Vegas, which is it studies emotional intelligence. It's essentially an opportunity to elevate your own. I mean, they didn't teach me how to play ace queen there, but they certainly taught me how to get my mindset in a place where I was both confident, prepared, and ready for success. And shortly after completing the course, I went on a tear. I made the final table of the EPT Monte Carlo. I won a World Series bracelet, and then I made the final table of the World Poker Tour final, like back to back to back. And my goal when I finished the course was to be in the top 15 in the Global Poker Index, and I skyrocketed up to number 1. And a lot of that has to do with obviously a little bit of luck, but mainly a sort of rededication and shift to making sure that my mindset was in the right place.
And this is a really interesting subject in terms of the importance of confidence for the professional player. How do you think it impacts people at the table?
Well, that's the interesting thing. When people go through losing streaks for, say, 3-4 months and, they say, listen, I'm playing really good, I'm just running bad. What happens when you run bad, if you will, or at least you perceive yourself as running bad for a month or so, is you stop recognizing opportunities that you would if you were feeling confident and lucky. Maybe there was a pot you didn't steal. Maybe there was a check raise bluff you could have made, but you're so in the mindset of like, oh God, I just don't want to lose another pot. I don't want to lose too much. So if your mindset isn't in that aggressive mind of like, I'm going to dominate, I'm going to take every opportunity, you'll be blind to the opportunities you're missing. And that happens habitually with the vast majority of poker players.
You mentioned something just a little bit ago that I want to go back to, because you talked about setting that goal for yourself of being in the, top of the Global Poker Index. How important do you think goal setting is for poker players, and what kinds of things do you think we should be setting our goals around?
Okay, well, that's an interesting question. And goal setting is something I've been doing for a long time, well before I did the course, but it's changed. So I set goals every year at the beginning of the year. And then I also have intention, which is slightly different. So my goals, are something that I look at that, maybe I haven't achieved before, that I'm stretching past what, so for example, I've won 2 bracelets in a year before. I'm not going to set a goal of winning 20 bracelets, right, in 1 year. I'm going to set a goal of 3. I've never done 3. It's a stretch. It's not easy. So my goal is to win 3 World Series of Poker bracelets. Now, a lot of people think, well, that's not realistic. And I go, perfect. I don't want it to be too realistic. I want it to be a stretch. Okay. Now the key, of course, is not being attached to results. But I put out my intention. I look at the amount of events. I go, you know what? 3 would be an awesome series. So my intention is to win 3. A goal I might set, might look slightly different, but they're very much intertwined in terms of how I do it. And I think it's very, very important to wake up in the morning and say, I think it's valuable for people that I know that are happy. They often wake up in the morning and say, what is my intention for today? What do I want to create in my life? What do I want to create for other people? And then you're way more likely to do those things if you're first conscious of the fact that that's what you actually want to do with your day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally feeling what you're saying, because I know if I get up on a day and I don't have any intention for the day just gets away, and then I don't get anything done that I wanted to get done. Whereas if I do set that intention up, maybe here's 3 things I want to get to today, then inevitably I do get to them.
Sure, yeah, more so than you might otherwise. And obviously there's times where you have intention to do something and you don't. But
right.
Because you said in the morning, this was something you'll notice it more. And like you said, you just don't go through autopilot essentially where, you continue to procrastinate and not get things done that you said you were going to do, because now you're conscious every morning of what it is you set out to do. And I journal as well. I write in a journal at night or in the morning, depending, and not every day, but most days. And, throughout my journal, I'll say, okay, well, you know what? I missed this today. I wasn't able to do this, but I'll make sure to make that call to my brother tomorrow and talk about, how things are going on with his wife. little things, but the more conscious you are, a plan for your day, it's just clear that you're more likely to live your life with that plan in mind.
And do you think that's just the factor of accountability? Sort of you're now holding yourself accountable for the success that you want to have?
That's certainly a major part of it. Absolutely. So when you declare an intention, right? And people mock me all the time for saying it, when I say things like, my intention is to end the day with 250,000 in chips on day one. The way I base that is I think, okay, what is a good position to be in on day two? Where would I really ultimately like to be around? Now, I'm not saying that's a goal, or that's not something that I'm like, if I said 250 and end up with 230, that's a failure. No, but I'm just saying, you know what? That would be good to have, 250. And speaking it out, declaring it out, in some sense, I wouldn't say in those areas, accountability is a big issue, but things like, I'm going to call my brother today, or I'm going to call a friend I haven't spoke to. Those are things where clearly it's about accountability.
But, it's almost like when you're talking about, you want to end the day with 250,000 chips, it's like you are kind of thinking ahead to how you want this tournament to go. Now, it might not go that way, but you're thinking ahead. And then by putting that in your mind, it seems to me like then you'd be looking for opportunities to make that actually happen instead of just letting things happen to you.
Well, what I do is I start at the end. Right? I start at the ultimate. So my vision, what is my vision, right? I enter a tournament, my vision, my goal, in that sense, I want to win. My intention is to win the tournament, right? So now I work backwards and say, okay, I have the big overriding goal, which is winning, and then little incremental benchmark spots of saying, okay, this would be a good place to be. This is, but of course, if I don't end up there, I'm not concerned with it, but I believe there's value in declaration and speaking it out. When I first started doing this, I wasn't doing this properly, because what I was doing was I was trying to manufacture the game, my play in such a way so I could get to these goals and numbers. The absolute key, and this is not easy for a lot of people, especially in the early goings, especially analytical people, is detaching yourself from the result. So saying, my intention is to end up with 250. If there's 30 minutes left and you've got 210, the key is not to say, okay, I have to make this goofy play to get to 250. You just have to detach yourself from that result. You put it out there in the universe, if you will, but the key is, of course, being detached from the result.
Exactly.
And do you see when people don't understand that, when they are setting these targets and they miss them, when they are attached to the result, can that then have a negative impact on them?
I believe it can. And again, there's a book I read a while ago called Infinite Possibilities, which talks very much about this sort of thing. And in it, there's a couple pages that spoke to me because I said in the beginning, I really struggled with the concept because I'm a very analytical thinker. And it was very difficult for me to not be attached to results. Because I remember the first time I started declaring, I'm going to win this tournament and all this kind of stuff, and I didn't. Oh my God, it was emotionally just a bigger hit than, before, when I would just play and whatever happened to happen. But that's because I was so closely attached with the result and not just the process and journey of declaring what my intentions are. And whether I achieve them or not is not where I need to keep my focus. And again, that's very, very difficult for a lot of people. And if they do it in the wrong way, early on especially, yes, it can be negative, I think.
Now, you've already gone through several, of your favorite techniques, such as setting goals, journaling, setting the intention. Do you have any other favorite kind of mental game or psychological techniques that you like to use?
Yes, absolutely. I did a course called Mastery, which is, this course is around all over the place. I did it at Choice Center. And one of the things I learned about how to be present is to separate. So say, for example, there's a big moment where I have 1 million chips and I just lost a big hand and I've only got 350,000, and it's all because some guy played a hand really, really badly, right? Mm-hmm. So often people have an emotional reaction to that, right? So what I found very valuable in terms of learning to be present is to separate my thoughts, my feelings from my physical sensations, and then choosing from there. So how does that look? Okay, that looks like this. What are my thoughts right now? Well, my thoughts are, this idiot just made a really stupid call and jeopardized my chance to win the tournament. What am I feeling? I might be feeling anger, right? Then what are my physical sensations? Well, you know what? I feel like a burning in my chest right now. My head feels hot. My legs are twitching, and I just feel anxious, okay? Now I'm present to what I'm actually feeling. And until you're actually present to what you're feeling, you can't change it. So once I've addressed where I'm at, now I'll choose. What do I want to be? I want to be focused, calm, relaxed, engaging, fun, and just present. So that little trick, the more you do it, the better you get at shifting out of it very, very quickly. If you watch World Series this year, you may see some times where I close my eyes. Typically, when I close my eyes, it's exactly what I'm doing. I'm getting present to what I'm feeling so that I can shift into something else.
It's very, very close to the hypnotherapy work I did with poker players in terms of visualizing and then just resetting the emotions. Is it something that you practice off of the table as well, Daniel, or is this only within the poker setting that you're practicing this?
Oh, this is something that I use in every aspect of my life. And as I've been doing it now for, almost 3 years, I've gotten pretty good at it. So anytime I find myself, typically whenever I'm feeling some sort of anger or rage is when I'll most likely go to it, whatever that is.
Someone cuts you up on the freeway. Is that another time you'd be practicing this?
That's a great example of someone
in Vegas
screwing me over and not paying. So a lot of times, say someone said they're going to pay me a bunch of money they owed me and they didn't, and they blew it away. Another way I look at that is I'll do that trick, but then I'll also look at what's the responsible version of my anger right now. So I loaned this person money. I made the choice to do so. Whether they did something right or wrong, I made that choice. So I can be a victim to it, victim to my circumstance, or take responsibility and say, you know what? I made an error in judgment by trusting this person. So what am I committed to in the future? Being more careful about who it is that I trust and the decisions I make financially.
I love that because you're taking responsibility instead of just saying, well, this happened to me and I'm a victim. You're saying, well, how can I empower myself no matter what happens to me?
And that's, there's so much value in that, not just in poker, but in life, but specifically in poker. People often, they come after a tournament, they'll tell you, oh my God, it was unbelievable. I had 2 kings, the guy had ace queen, he caught an ace on the river. And then for my last chips, I had 2 10s, and the guy has pocket 8s, he hit an 8, right? What is the value in that? What is the value in that story? There is none. I don't see any value in just saying, okay, I'm a victim to my circumstance. Where there is value is to look back at the entire tournament and go, how did I get down to 25 big blinds in the first place? What other mistakes, what other areas of my play could I have improved so that I wasn't in a situation where I had less chips than my opponent? There's no value in being a victim to the circumstance. The only value comes from when you stand responsible 100% for your results and look at, say, sometimes you'll play a tournament, you did everything right and you got knocked out. Okay, you keep doing that, things are going to be just fine. The victim mentality, the addiction, I would call it, of so many players to telling these stories, they attach themselves to it so that they no longer have responsibility. Well, this dealer's unlucky for me. That guy played bad, so I lost. I'm just unlucky. Okay, if that's where your mindset's at, you get to be right.
Exactly.
And is that something you see even at the stakes that you're playing? So are very elite players also responding that way? Or is it people who perhaps aren't so elite who you're noticing doing that?
Well, I said this in an interview with Poker Strategy not too long ago, and a lot of people took it as very controversial. And what I said was, I think at the highest levels, you see far less victim mentality. And I said, I don't think that's a coincidence. Typically, the topic of conversation in these super high rollers is about what's best for the environment, diet, how to change the world to make it a better place, what charitable ideas can we come up with to make a difference, and a lot less, oh my God, I'm so unlucky, oh poor me. I see that far less often at the highest levels. And like I said, I don't think it's a coincidence that those successful people typically have a mindset that is in line with them, being at their best.
Yeah, I definitely notice a difference in clients I'm working with at the higher stakes are often having issues with mistake tilt. So they're upset with themselves and they want to be able to deal with that more effectively. Where at the lower stakes and mid stakes, that's where I hear much more of the issues around the bad beat stories. Because, as I say, to reach that elite level, it can be a pretty key part of the mindset.
Yeah. And, you touched on something I thought was really interesting about mistake tilt, which is really interesting because that's definitely a premise that's going to hit those types of people that stand responsible for the results. So another trick I would use in those cases is first and foremost to say, okay, to first of all, acknowledge your mistake. So you acknowledge that, I made a mistake on this hand. I should have read the situation here. So what am I committed to? First, acknowledge the mistake and then say, what am I committed to from here on out? And then that's one way in which you can let go of it. Because if you don't let go of it, it will often be the detriment to your tournament. If you can't get past the error you made. I had a good friend, many years ago, Hoxie, perfect example. Many years ago, he would play cash games, and he was one of the most talented players in the world, no question about it. But if he would make a mistake or two, he would just be an absolutely terrible player. He would go to his F game, and I used to say to him, why does that happen? He's like, well, if I make a mistake, what's the sense in playing good? I mean, I already screwed up, right? So unless you can play at 100%, what's the point? And I said, listen, Huck, if you're at 80%, you'll get all the money. But if you keep going, 100 to 3%, you're going to still be on empty, And it was really interesting how he would sabotage himself, after one error.
Yeah, you see that not just at the poker table, but just all around you, like people being on diets, for example. They slip up on their diet, and then we call it in psychology the what the hell effect, because you'll slip up once and then you go, well, what the hell? And then you'll just continue down that bad path.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's why I think the method of really acknowledging the error, or acknowledging, you know what? I shouldn't have eaten this pizza today. That's off my diet. But you know what? I'm committed to my vision for myself, which is to be physically fit and to whatever, maybe lose the weight that I want. So I'm going to course correct, and I'm going to get back on track and not let it sabotage you. Because like you said, that's a very common trait for a lot of people. The what the hell thing you called it.
Yep.
Makes sense.
And then around the mistakes as well, something I've seen being useful for players is if you can actually see noticing a mistake as actually something that's very strong for your game. It's something that you can then work on. That without noticing the mistakes, you can't evolve as a player. And if you can start to see that as a positive, that's something that guys have certainly said has really taken a lot of that negativity away from noticing the mistakes on those tables.
Yeah, absolutely. So another way I would phrase that is every breakdown you have in life or at the poker table is an opportunity for a breakthrough. So if you're making a mistake and you continually habitually make it without learning anything, well, now you're making an egregious error. But if you make mistakes because you're going to, and you're going to have breakdowns in everything you do, the key is to turn that into a learning experience and say, you know what? Drinking all night was definitely not a good idea before a tournament. I'm going to have a breakthrough here and realize that if I want to be a professional, that's not something I can continue to do.
Now, I do want to get your opinion on, have you heard of the 10,000 hour rule, and do you have an opinion about it in terms of its application to poker?
Absolutely. I read the book. I think it was Outliers, or it was the one before that. I think it was Outliers, right?
Yep.
By Malcolm Gladwell. Yes. No, I think it makes a lot of sense. Basically, as you meant, it's 10,000 hours to master anything. And I know that in my teens, I put in my 10,000 hours probably before I was 21. And like with anything, the journey and the process to mastering something is going to have a lot of breakdowns and a lot of errors. You have to first of all acknowledge that you're making them, but look at them as opportunities to improve. And the more, like you said, the more times you're spotting errors, you're getting better as a player, because now you're understanding the game on a deeper level. So you're saying, okay, that's a play I used to make, but now I know it's an error. So you've actually somewhat corrected something. And occasionally you're going to still make the error, but the difference is now you know it's an error where you didn't maybe before.
And then when it comes to the sort of the lifestyle choices around poker, so the diet, the exercise, those sorts of things, how important is that in your life? And when you're looking at sort of the elite players that you're playing against, has that now become a big theme sort of within that community, or are there still people who are saying, none of that matters, I just need to turn up?
Well, it depends who you listen to, right? If you listen to the people that are playing at the highest levels, in the super high rollers that are actually at work doing it, the vast majority of them are very conscious of their physical fitness. That means I go to a gym now in one of these high rollers and it's packed. They're, what they're eating, what they're putting into their bodies, their mental state. A lot of them are meditating. If you listen to someone like, I saw that he said this, so it was referenced to me, someone like Mason Malmuth saying that, diet or exercise have nothing to do with your poker play. I would first of all question the source, right? And he's not somebody that I would consider successful in today's game. Like, he couldn't go in there and win. So his view of it is shaded. I get his premise and the idea that, yes, learning how to play poker is first and foremost the most important thing. But at the highest levels, most of these guys already play a pretty good game. And the difference, if you want to be, go above and beyond and be at your best and with whatever you do, there's no question that being physically fit, getting more oxygen to your brain is going to help you in any endeavor. It's going to help you be better at virtually anything you do. I don't think that's debatable at all.
Yeah, there's a ton of research that's out that shows that for peak performance, diet, exercise, meditation, like all the things you're talking about are just critical to it. You can't just luck box your way into win after win. Maybe you can do it once or maybe even twice, but to be a winner on a long-term consistent basis, you really have to put in effort into just all these areas.
And he actually made a really poor analogy where he talked about a couple players from the old days who were obese and they were smoking and they were drinking and they were great poker players and they won a bunch of money, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the question is, do you really think that if they had a better diet, exercise, and were not drinking at the table, they would do worse? Or is it possible that they may have been even better than they were, right? So I think however you look at it, adding in those aspects to an already, intelligent poker player who knows the game, I don't see how you could logically make an argument that isn't beneficial to your bottom line. It's not possible. Just I can't accept it.
And sort of leads into this year with the tweets between you and Stealth Monk and the challenge that you had set from that side. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Well, this kid Stealth Monk, he used to really attack me pretty hard on Twitter, and I learned very quickly that he's not a happy kid. He's had issues with depression. He's admittedly been suicidal in his past. So part of what I thought, I was like, I have two approaches here, right? I can fight fire with fire, but then I thought, I'm pretty blessed in my life, and I thought to myself, how can I make a difference for this kid, right? Like, what's the best way to handle this? And I thought, okay, he offered a challenge to play me heads up, and I said, okay, how about this? We'll do this challenge, but here's what I want in return, because I don't want the money. I have enough money. I don't need his $100,000. But I thought, how about if I get this kid started on a path where maybe he starts to do things where he sees possibility he didn't before? And originally I had a full program that I was going to make him do, which was like, do the course that I did at Choice Center, like do meditation, do yoga, all these things. But, it was too much for him, if you will. So I said, okay, let's just make it a weight loss thing. So you have to start doing some exercise and eating better. And my intention really was to spark some positive change in him. And likewise, instead of me being angry and venomous towards him, I'm like, well, you know what? Let's do something nice for him. And that'll just make me feel better about the whole situation anyway. So that's really what sparked that.
And it also starts the debate in poker as well, doesn't it? Around the diet, the exercise, the meditation. If you're putting out challenges like that, obviously you're saying, I believe this is good for poker players. And that starts opening some of these conversations.
Well, no, I believe it's good for all humanity, really, to be conscious of what you're eating, making sure you're doing physical fitness. There's another book called The Eighth Habit, which explains it quite simply. It says that there's 168 hours in a week. If you spend 1.5 of those hours, just 90 minutes a week, doing some sort of physical exercise, it improves the other 166.5 hours because it's chemically proven. Serotonin is released in the brain. You're just happier. Nobody ever said, you know what? I wish I didn't go to the gym today. I don't know anyone who's ever said that.
You're right. There's a lot coming out in the psychological research literature, if you will, that shows that exercise can be just as effective, if not more effective, than antidepressant medication.
And for, a sidetrack of that is a lot of people who are addicted to drugs, many of them take up running, like marathon running, and they have what's called the runner's high, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And it's similar to that, as you're doing exercise and running, serotonin is being released that is a lot healthier than like heroin.
Right.
Yeah, certainly no one's going to argue that point.
Who knows, man? You never know.
No, that's true. That's true. And in terms of how you're now approaching the game, obviously with all of this success, do you find the media side of it actually makes it more fun, or do you now, when you head to the event, sort of dread the fact that everyone will come? I'm assuming everyone will come over and say hi. You're going to be asked for interviews and things like that. How do you deal with that role in poker?
It's very comfortable for me. I've been in it for a very, very long time, and it's something that I craved and I wanted, and I enjoy. I enjoy being an ambassador for the game, and it gives me a platform to talk about things that I'm passionate about and also to make a difference. At the PCA last year, I did a sort of seminar on kind of similar to what you guys are talking about in the mental game and talking about things like intention and how to best prepare yourself. And it was really, really rewarding. I feel good about helping other people because I think that it transcends poker. I'm talking specifically about what that can help, how this can help their poker game. But the overriding message that I'm sending is how this can help you lead a happier life.
It's very interesting because one of the models of psychotherapy that I really enjoy is an Adlerian model. And Alfred Adler, who originated that, said that, if you wanted to be a success in life, you need to concentrate on love, work, and friendship. And really the whole thing that tied it together was a concept called Gemeinschaftsgefühl, which is social interest. And it sounds like that's where you've gotten to, where you are, contributing to others. You're not just working all the time, but you're calling friends or you're sharing advice. So I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but what you're saying, is really kind of how it hits me.
And that was great to talk to Daniel there. And we'll be finishing off that interview next week. If you enjoyed the show and you think this is the sort of content you'll be interested in, please check us out on iTunes and you can subscribe to the show and you'll be sent the show each week to your phone or iPad or whatever device you have attached to it. So check out our show. That's the Mindset Advantage podcast on iTunes and subscribe to us. Next week, we obviously have the second part of the Daniel Negreanu interview. And Tricia, where can people find out about you?
You can check out my website, www.drtriciacardner.com, or you can follow me on Twitter @Dr. Tricia Cardner.
And my website is pokermindcoach.com. And again, remember to check out pokermindcoach.com/sale to get that $7 MP3. We hope you'll come back next week. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast with Elliot Rowe and Dr. Tricia Gardner. To get any resources mentioned in the episode or to listen to past shows, visit pokermindcoach.com/TMA podcast. Thanks for listening.